I'm pretty sure Calvin's doing this as revenge because I laugh at him the way he records things. So.
Yeah. Putting you on the spot. Are you saying you give him a hard time about the way he sounds on the podcast and whatnot?
No, I give him a hard time about playing with rubber bands while he's recording, and
because I fidget with my hands, and she's hyper aware of me as much as I am of myself. So it's pretty funny.
That's great.
Like my face does a weird thing, and I always fidget with my fingers because I don't know what else to do. So
yeah,
she's always calling me out.
It's fair though, because I'm realizing that I actually fidget, and I didn't think that I did. So now it's like, let's see who fidgets more, me or Cal.
Yeah.
So this episode is actually a contest
to see who fidgets more or fidgets less.
Both.
Yeah, I'm so bad at fidgeting. I mean, I feel like probably anyone that's ever hung out with me in any context, like I'm always like tossing my phone or something. I don't know. I never think about it. I try to think about it a lot when we're doing like small groups because I'm just like, I'm being distracting and I don't even think about it. Kendra just gave me a smirk. She agrees. Yeah. So as usual, we've been recording because that's what we do.
Yep. I've watched enough episodes. Mm-hmm. I'm prepared
to know that you're never safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I've learned is like security is a lie. So
security is a lie.
It's a lie.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into that deeper, I'm sure. That's one of the big things that I've learned. So.
For sure. Yeah, so we'll hop into this thing. Sorry, the audio is different. We tried troubleshooting with Calvin's audio and Bethany's audio, and it's beyond the works of science. So it is what it is, friends. But yeah. I'll pray and then we'll hop into it. Sound good?
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. God, thank you so much for the opportunity to come together and just share about you at work, to hear Bethany's story. The three of us want to be teachable. We want to have open hearts to whatever you have for us to hear, whether Bethany has stuff for me and Calvin to hear, or we have things to encourage her with, or I don't know if this is for any particular person who listens. We just want to be open to whatever that is. And just to lift you up during this conversation, that I don't know, any expectation that we have, or I don't know, things that we want to get out, that we just lay that aside and let it be what it needs to be. And I just thank you for all that you do, and again, just that we can have a chance to share the story of you at work, and share that with others. Give this conversation to you in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, this is a Let God Die podcast. This is Josh.
And this is Calvin.
And our guest today is our good friend, Bethany Gemus.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to say my name or not, so I just let you do it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have clarified that. So a little context. I don't know if I met Bethany until after I moved to Pennsylvania, I believe.
I don't remember actually meeting you until 2017, 4th of July, but you knew who I was. So it was like, yeah, sure. So
yeah. The social media is a weird place because I feel like that's the case all the time. I meet people sometimes and they're like, "Oh, I know who you are." It's like, that's creepy. But in this case, I'm the one that's creepy because I had some context of who you were. Basically, I just knew. I could tell that there was something about your heart, even just from social media things, just as far as like having a heart for people. One thing that I just want to share. And I hope this doesn't, I don't know how you take compliments, so I don't want to embarrass you. But
I take them awkwardly, but they're welcome.
Cool. Well, yeah. So one thing that just like stands out like crazy to me is when our friend Ryan passed away last fall. It's coming up on close to a year now. That Kendra's just looking and smiling because this was something we appreciated like crazy. But we had quite a few friends that just hit us up asking like how they could help out with the memorial service we were having. But Bethany, you were one of the people that never met Ryan, and it was just really cool because I remember that you said something like, "Hey, I never met Ryan, but I heard a lot about him, and I know a lot of the people that are close to me were really close to him, and he meant a lot to them." Yeah, so Bethany just said like, if there's any way I can help, just like be a presence that day, I would love to be there. And yeah, I don't know, that just meant a lot because I think for some people that might be kind of like an awkward thing of, I don't know, like wanting to maybe be there, but feeling like, I don't know, that could be weird or whatever. But it was just like, it was really meaningful to me and all of us that you wanted to step in and like serve us, so we could focus on being together, and you could just kind of be there and greet people. So yeah, I don't know, that's just one little story that like meant the world to me, meant the world to Kendra. She and Kendra brought up that you held Evelyn the whole time, and yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, to be fair, I got to the benefit of holding your like 3 or 4 month old for a while. It was really sweet, but I didn't do it for that.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that kind of thing that just like seems like second nature to me is not to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like, oh, people don't do this normally, huh? Like, they're not like bashing them. I didn't know, because that just is like what my heart is like. I guess the like blanket term is hosting, and like, the role that you said would be helpful is just like greeting. I know the church pretty well, which isn't saying a lot because it's little, but like, I just want to be there for people in whatever nature that looks like. And I guess I didn't realize how not normal that was.
Yeah, totally. So, and it's interesting, just like when you're so close to yourself, being yourself, how you just don't realize that certain things that God's placed on your heart are like giftings, specifically to you, that you would just never think twice about. But yeah, just the fact that that's your natural inclination. But yeah, I just want to give you props with that, and thank you for being a friend to friends. And
my pleasure, for real.
Yeah. And Kelvin, do you want to give us a little context of like how you know Bethany, and like as a friend and ministry wise and all that?
Yeah. So I met Bethany. We both served at our home church at Metro doing youth ministry together, and we were both small group leaders for our high school ministry. And Bethany literally did not talk for like the first 2 years I knew her at all. He did not speak. But like, I knew like inside of her, like there was like this deep longing to just be with the kids and to like you said, like to be a presence and to offer what little she did have or felt as if she could give. And clearly that went such a long way, because not only did you like finish out with your girls, but like even now, like you're continuously doing that, you're continuously growing. So as we've kind of like got to know each other doing meetings and things like that, our good friend Gordon, who we did the podcast with in the past, Mr. Shearhorn, he kind of like took us both under, like kind of mentored us together. So we got to spend even more time together with that. And then really getting to hear what the Lord was doing in her heart and how it was playing out in her life, which is like, man, like of all the people I've met, like this girl really seems to get it. Like she really seems to get Jesus in a real way. And like, she's not really big on words, as you can tell, but her life is like extremely powerful, and it's very simple. And that's one of the things that got my attention about like having you on a podcast is like, man, like where does that come from? Like, how did that become real for you?
It's really crazy because Calvin says I never talked, but to me, I was doing great, because when I was in high school, like I wouldn't talk if it wasn't like an answer to the pastor or something that had to do with Jesus. So like one time me and Calvin talked about just like two of our students that were close to each other, like we had a conversation about it. I'm like, man, I'm talking to boys. I'm like, wow, that sounds so lame. But just like, there's so many levels to this. But I thought, like, I'm stepping out, I'm talking to people, and like Calvin said I was quiet, and I was like, well, that's because you were a boy. And then like I talked to like one of my mentors who's a woman, and she was like, yeah, you're so quiet. It's funny that you love talking to people one-on-one. And I was like, you thought I was quiet too?
So it was like completely out of mind for you?
So great. Yeah.
That's so funny.
I guess like we got so used to dealing with like because of the size of our church, it's very extroverted like personalities. And Bethany's is not like extroverted at all. It's very more quiet, very more reserved, but like powerful. So like for that reason, that's why I was like, she barely talks. But then you were talking, but it just wasn't in a way where like people just like seeing you. Because like you never had this thing about yourself where you want to be like the most important person in the room. Like you realize that even early on in ministry, is like, I'm not the center of the universe. Like this thing is for Jesus, you know. And a lot of people in our circles didn't quite understand that. So that's what stood out. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
So she did talk, I guess.
Yeah.
I could take that back. She did speak a bit.
For sure. Yeah. Well, let's get to some of your story, Bethany. Yeah, I just want to echo that. Like, yeah, I see this like quiet strength in you, you know, of just like having a servant's heart. And yeah, well, maybe we'll stop talking about you and making you feel uncomfortable. But we I don't know. We just want to kind of establish like that we respect you a lot, and we really love you and appreciate what you are to the community and the body of Christ. And yeah, I guess if you want to share a little bit of your story of coming to Jesus and what your journey has been.
Real quick, you said quiet strength or something like that just a second ago.
Yeah.
And in like November, I was like, well, it's been like a process of confidence, but there's a verse, I don't remember where it is, but it was my lock screen for a while, and it says, in quietness and confidence is your strength. And that really resonated with me, because I was like, yeah, I don't have to be loud to be bold. Like, anyways, but yeah, my story, I'm really bad at short stories, so I will try to be concise.
We're really bad at putting out short episodes, so I think we'll fit right in. So.
I told her she's in safe company, man.
Yeah.
I'm a detail-oriented person, like to the max, and so I'm like, yeah, you know, this one time in this season of the year when I was 10, not really.
Go way back.
So
I was born a baby.
I was born a baby,
and I remember everything. That's terrifying. Yeah, because I've seen a baby be born. You don't want to remember that.
I really don't.
Thanks.
Yeah. All jokes aside, we can hop into things.
I was born a baby, in fact, but my mom was baptized Catholic, but her family didn't really go to church when I was little, unless, you know, like holidays or something, or funerals. It was also like my grandma is 50% Italian and 50% Lebanese. So the Catholic church we went to was an Arabic church, and the services were in like Arabic. So yeah, you know, Catholic church in Arabic, I didn't understand any of it. Anytime I've gone to a funeral, I don't understand any of it. But my dad's mom, she had always gone to this little church in Dearborn. I guess it's not little, but it's not huge. And she would pick me up occasionally on her way to church, but it wasn't something I did regularly. But when I was 7, there was a little girl who I was in school with who lived across the street from me, and a bus would come and pick her up from pick her up for church every week. And so I started going to church with her because she was my friend and I wanted to go with her. And nothing really happened at that church. Like I'm pretty sure that's the church that I first like said the salvation prayer of like, yeah, Jesus, come into my heart. But I didn't have an understanding of like what that was. And I remember every week they would say, okay, we're going to say this prayer now. And if you want Jesus to forgive you of your sins, like, we're going to do this. And I would do it every week because, surely I sinned again since last week.
Uh-huh.
So there wasn't like an understanding of like, hey, he already lives in you. And like, yeah, I don't know, somewhere soon after that, I think it was only like a year that I did that or something. My uncle, my mom's brother, started going to a different church in Dearborn, and my family started going there on Sundays. And yeah, I was at that church until I was like 19. But my mom and dad broke up, separated, divorced, all that stuff when I was like 10 or 11, 12. Somewhere in there was separation and then divorce later. And my mom worked Sundays and my dad moved to Alabama. So I didn't go on Sundays anymore unless, my uncle picked us up or something. But I started going on Wednesdays for youth group. And I did that every week. So sometimes my youth leaders would pick me up on Sunday if I asked. I didn't ask usually, but especially if we did conferences or something, I would be asked to give my testimony because I wasn't afraid to like stand in front of people and tell them like what God had been doing, whereas like a lot of my friends in youth group were.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I
And
yeah,
I guess
I don't know.
I guess I had a question like I guess at that point in time, maybe, how would you have told your story of coming to Jesus, if that makes sense?
Yeah, at that point in time, I thought a lot about what I would say for my story of Jesus because there was this like starting going to church when I was 7, there wasn't like a lot that I could have gotten into that I felt like was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I was really afraid of trouble. Like Calvin thinks this is hilarious, but I have a brother who's 2 years younger than me, and I struggled with anger a lot, but also like I hated the idea of trouble, and so did he. And so we would fight, and like we'd get in trouble. So my parents would leave to go like to the grocery store or something, and they'd say, "Okay, Michael, Bethany, don't fight." And then we have a sister who's 3 years younger than me, and Michael and I would be fighting, and she'd say, "I'm gonna call mom," and we'd say, "We're just playing." And, like we're like fighting each other on the couch, like yeah. And so I think I had like a habit of lying where I didn't want to be in trouble, so I wouldn't like admit things because it was easier to like twist it so that I wasn't in trouble. And there's just like a lot of shame from stuff like that, and just like I had built up this idea of like what a Christian woman should look like. And like, sure, I was just a girl, but I had these silly ideas of like what a Christian woman should look like. And so I had this like facade that I would play in church of like, I don't make jokes. I laugh if other people make jokes, but I don't make jokes. And I only talk about things that are like not okay. I was like, this is a bad way of describing it because like of utmost appropriateness. Like like my friend she would make a joke like, my love for you is like diarrhea, I just can't hold it in. And like, to me, I would never.
Oh,
So
that's
to me, like,
that's strong.
That is endearing.
so
Nothing says
so
love.
but I wouldn't make any kind of joke like that, because that's like not appropriate for a lady to talk about, you know. But oh no, I dropped the AirPod. But I would joke at home with my mom and my siblings with stuff like that, or you know, and they just like, they fully knew me, and there was no hiding from them like who I was. But so then I had this like, this is me with my friends who know me, and this is me with my church friends. And I don't invite my church friends to do things with me because I don't want them to see the way I act when I'm not at church.
Gotcha.
And like,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't necessarily bad, but it was just like, I thought like, briefly, or like, to put it brief, like, you know, to be a Christian woman, you can laugh at jokes, but you don't laugh loud, which I have a loud laugh. So that's hard. And then
Confirmation.
and so, you know, you can laugh, but you don't laugh loud, and you can say things, but you say them softly, and everything about you is gentle. And you know, I just like thought I had to fit into this box of like being perfect, and so not being that made it really hard. All of my walk at that point was merits based, and it was like, okay, well, to be a Christian means that I look like love, and love is patient and kind, and you know, so I would work to be those things, and it wasn't a true being those things. Like, I don't know that thought process makes sense. It was like, I can be kind, but in my head I'm so frustrated with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I can be kind because that's what a Christian woman should do, you know.
Like not wanting to, maybe not wanting to show weakness, and seeing that if you showed weakness, or maybe even just like in sincere side of you, that you would lose respect, or
yeah, probably. I guess like part of like everything is I was very controlling about what people knew of me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want them to know things about me that I hadn't shown them, and I didn't want them to make judgments about me that I didn't like lead them to make, which is silly. And it wasn't like think whatever you want about Calvin. I'm not going to try and control what you think of Calvin, but what you think of me, like I don't want you to be into any part of me that I haven't let you into. Like I will open the doors, you will not touch the handle. Like
that's a good way to put it, though. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I don't know that it was so much that I didn't want people to see that I wasn't perfect, but it was more that I was upset that I wasn't perfect, and I like didn't trust that they would still want to be around me if they knew that I wasn't perfect. Josh, are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just can't see you.
Oh, okay. My bad. Well,
okay.
So for yourself, do you think that came from like family dynamics, from what you knew of like church teaching, or do you think that was more internal pressure?
I think it was internal. I think it's this idea that like I don't want to represent Jesus bad.
Gotcha.
And like, I knew who Jesus was, and I didn't want people to look at me and think like, oh, if she's representing Jesus, I don't want him. It's like, there's this thing that, you know, God's going to pursue whoever he pursues fully, and they're going to run smack into him, but it doesn't actually, like, yeah, I can do a bad job of showing people who he is, but that doesn't stop him from showing who he is.
Yeah.
But there is this, like, probably at like a youth conference I went on or something, like, there was this idea that like people should know that you're a Christian by your actions and not by you saying that you're a Christian. And so hearing that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to look like a Christian, but this is who a Christian is. Like, this is what a Christian should look like. And like embracing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think like me and Calvin have talked a ton on the podcast, and I'm sure you've heard Calvin use the phrase of like, you know, we're not the hero of our story. You know, it's more about pointing people to Jesus. And I think that's very common where like we get it, I guess, kind of twisted, almost like we want, I mean, ultimately, if we want people to know Jesus, like maybe that's the intention, but the way it manifests itself or looks is almost like we're pointing them to ourselves and all this self-imposed pressure. It's actually, I think it's cool that you said all that, because I'll just share. A couple of nights ago I came home and I was a tool in the way that I talked with Kendra, and got in this argument with my sister-in-law, and one of my buddies was over too, and I actually like took off for a walk for a while. I just felt like an idiot because I was just like, man, I lost my cool. And it was like in front of friends, you know, and it was just dumb. But I met up with one of my buddies who was over that night today, and he was just like asking how things were. And then he was just like, yeah, I don't know if this like sounds weird or whatever, but he was just like, I kind of like have this like different respect for you. And he said like, not that like you handled things well, but it was kind of cool for me to like see that you are human. And I was just like, well, I mean, I hope I wasn't putting on this air of like, I don't know, not having flaws before, you know. But he was just saying that like, yeah, like I know that it's not all about like looking up to you as someone who has it together, but it's about, you know, the God that's in you, the God that's in me, you know. So it wasn't like this, oh, like it didn't matter how I acted the other day. It was more so like this kind of like sobering reminder of like, yeah, it's not about me, you know, it's about pointing to God, and like, I don't know, kind of like a reminder of, yeah, I want to be able to get out of the way to point to him. If that makes sense. But at the same time, seeing it as not using that as an excuse or as justification, you know, but just recognizing that like, yeah, it's not about like you being the representative of Jesus and you looking right. At the same time, yeah, if we are close to him, we reflect him. Yeah. Right. You know? Yeah. But at the same time, like our goal is not to point people to us and think that we're great and we have it together, you know. If anything, like people in my life that like are very flawed and like I've seen just like big messes of, but they like react in a way that's humble and like, I guess you can tell that they, you know, like in the Bible, John saying like, you know, referring to himself as the one who Jesus loved, you know, like people in my life that like, you just know like, all right, they know how much they're loved. That shows me Jesus way more than someone who's like, all right, like I want to show you how much I love God. If that makes sense. I don't know if I'm expressing that quite right, but
no, totally. Like I think for a long time, that we can put so much pressure on ourselves to be like you were saying, like that representation of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
so much so that we become like hyper aware of ourselves. And in doing that, like we're at the end of that, like we're trying to put the glory on our ability to represent rather than the one who we're actually representing.
Yeah.
And that will produce like that'll produce a walk that's not even powerful. Like it's gonna produce bondage actually. It's not gonna produce freedom.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
like the things that I've even experienced so far is that I've actually represented Jesus to people more ways in me being wrong than me getting it right. And at least
Yeah.
me admitting the fact that I was wrong and need correction, like you were saying, there's so much more of God's glory in a heart that's repentant than it is in one that's prideful.
Yeah.
And like your buddy was saying, like there's a side of representing yourself to God that's like, I am walking with Jesus, but I'm also just as much in process as you are. So like there's no me being the standard of Christianity. Like there is Christ, he's the standard, and I'm gonna preach him. And if I'm off, I'm gonna admit that I'm off. And I'm gonna make things right with the person that I've hurt,
Yeah.
Mhm.
for the glory of God, because that's like it's like that's not who he is. Like the way I acted the other day was completely unacceptable, and I'm sorry you had to see that, but like that's not my father's heart. I wasn't walking with him. I was doing my own thing. But like he loves us even in the middle of all that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I feel like I'm jumping. I have to remind myself like it's okay. This is a conversation. You don't have to like
Yeah.
tell everything in order. But like the that's one of like the biggest breakthroughs I had to have in meeting with Gordon. Like there was one time where I was just like, yeah, Gordon, I was like getting angry at people in traffic today, and like I'm just gonna like choose to pray for people when I get frustrated with them instead of like getting angry. So then I'm like taking my anger and like choosing to pray for them instead. And he was like, okay, but are you trying to not be angry or are you surrendering the anger to God? And I was like,
Dang.
He does that.
Yeah.
like,
That's a
He
good
does
word
that.
though.
and
Hmm.
I didn't know that I could surrender those things. Like it's like, yeah, I knew I could pray that I wouldn't be angry every time it happens, and maybe I would, be turned to peace in that. But it's like I thought it was like me trying to not be angry by praying every time it happens instead of like me asking Holy Spirit to like change my heart. And
Hmm.
like I I thought that this is like a work that I was doing when really it's a work that he's doing if I let him. And
Yeah.
like I didn't know that. Like I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but Calvin has probably heard me talk about this. That it's like he is the potter and we're the clay. And as the clay, I was like trying to stick out my clay arms and like shape myself up into like the shape that I thought looked like a Christian.
Yeah.
And the whole time, Holy Spirit's like, they're like, hey, I could do this. I know what shape you're supposed to be. And then, like, I'm like, no, I'm not pretty enough for you to touch me yet. And, like, I'm like trying to pull up my own edges, but in trying to pull up my own edges, I'm sticking out arms where they don't go. And it's like, this isn't helping anything.
The
And the whole
word.
time, like, the Holy Spirit's just like, I could do this. Like, if you let me, I could do this. And, like, I just thought like I haven't tried hard enough for you yet. Like you shouldn't touch me. I'm not worthy. And it's like he's here to do the change, but I was not letting him because I thought that I was doing the change.
Yeah.
And like that's one of the things that has really become different in my life is like in surrender to him, like the change happens. Like things that I was trying to change for years that I couldn't change because I'm sticking out my clay arms. And he just like pushes them back into place and bakes them there so they don't move. um, yeah, so that was a big thing. But I don't know that I answered your question, but yeah, where my walk was at then was that it was very much workspace and very much like trying to give the impression that I was doing well, when honestly I spent a lot of time crying and like just like asking God, like how I would ever like get out of like the habits that I was in, and just like I I don't know, like I knew he was real that entire time. Had I don't know that I was clinically depressed because I didn't like check it out, but there was like a point where a boy in my high school died, and I like cried on my stairs at my house because I couldn't put a face to his name. And I was like, how sad. Like there's only 800 kids in my school. Like that's a pretty small high school. And I don't know who this boy was. And I cried. And then I also read a ton of books at the time, and this girl like had cancer and she found out she had an upset stomach, and I was like, oh no, I have an upset stomach, and I like was like, I must have cancer. And then I just like I wouldn't think like about killing myself, but I would think like, what would happen if I was dead? Like how would people react if I was dead? I don't know. It wasn't like a how would I do it, but it was just like a how would people react if I was dead and not here.
Maybe
And,
like are you saying like having some questions of your worth or like your value to people, or was it just kind of like being in?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of like I remember one time I got really upset with my brother, and I felt like my mom was taking his side, and like we were on vacation, and I was just like, what would happen if they came back and I was like dead in the tub? Like it's really morbid, but like I remember thinking that like how would they feel then? Like I don't know. It's really sad. But and so at that point I was like I remember like coming down to my mom, and I was like, Mom, I need to go talk to Andrew. And Andrew is my youth pastor. And so she was like, okay. And I called him, and I went to his house, and I was just like, Andrew, I'm not thinking about killing myself, but I'm thinking like, what would happen if I just died? And like that was probably the first time that I was real with him. And also like the most real that I ever was with him. But I was just like, I don't know what to do with this. And he was like, he handled it really well. Like he was like, a lot of teenagers feel this way, like you're not alone. And he just talked to me about it, and then I saw a therapist for a while, which I did not have the right heart for and stopped going. But I I was trying to be perfect, and that only got me into hurt places where, I was like, what do I do? But all right. So the reason I started talking about this is, even then, like I knew Jesus was real. Like there was a time where I was like laying on my couch in the living room, and all of a sudden, like there was just like a heavy weight like on my chest where I felt like I was pinned to the couch and I couldn't get up. Mm-hmm. And like I don't know how to describe it. It just felt so heavy, and like I was weighed down, and like it was on my like crushing my chest. And like I just remember like shouting Jesus, and like as soon as I got Jesus out, like I could sit up, and like I could see the power in who he was. And I'm not necessarily saying it was a demon or whatever. I don't know. All I know is that I felt so heavy, like panic, and like saying Jesus brought forth like the lifting of the weight. And like so I knew that he was real, and I knew that he cared, but I just like I didn't have a pursuing of him. Mm-hmm. Even though he was obviously pursuing me. And I would like fall asleep when I prayed, like every time, and I fall asleep when I read my Bible, and I just like I was not very enamored I think that's a good word for it. I was not very enamored. And yeah, I was like, I wanted the benefit of Jesus, but I didn't necessarily want to pursue him in return. And that's crazy because he's so worthy of being pursued. But yeah, I don't know. So one of the reasons that I stopped going to therapy is like, so this whole time, like I felt like I needed to be the best version of myself, like even with my best friends in high school, who are still two of my best friends. But, I felt like even they wouldn't want me around if they fully like knew me. And so I like started talking to people online when I was like 15. And like that's when I stopped going to therapy. And I think it's like I was so desperate to be known fully. And like when I started talking to people online, I had nothing to prove to them. So I could just like talk to them however I wanted to.
Yeah.
And like, so then I was like, oh, well, I have these friends who I don't know, but they accept me, so I don't need therapy anymore because that's not a problem anymore. People like me now, or I could at least talk to people. And yeah, there's also like, there's so many layers that started as a teenager. So I'm sorry if it feels like I'm focused on this a lot. But,
No, you're good. No,
just like,
I just wanted to ask, like at that time, did that was like that a healthy step to get you to open up to people in person, or did it
no,
did it close you
was
off
the
to
worst.
a point that
Yeah.
okay.
Because then I was ashamed that I was talking to people online.
Yeah.
Double-edged sword.
Vicious circle.
Oh gosh.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I am just realizing like more and more layers to it. Like this is a pretty big deal for my story, so I'm gonna get into this part.
Yeah.
But I read lots and lots of like young adult romance stories, like just like the girl who's alone and then there's a guy who she meets and they fall in love, and basically the same story with different details every time. But I've probably read like 50 at least, and that's a lot. And it's like I would read them, and even the ones that weren't written well, I'd read all the way through because I'm like, I need to know if I get it right. Like, I need to know if this ends the way that I suspect it will. And like, it just like set me up to like over romanticize love and guys, and just like the idea of like anybody you meet could be somebody that you end up with,
Mm-hmm.
And I was very aware of like my interactions with guys because I was like, what if I hug them and then they think that I like them and I don't want to give them that impression. And so like the guys in youth group I would high five, I would only ever high five them. And
She's not lying.
anyways, so I was very like aware of it because I just had over romanticized the idea of love, and like I didn't want to give the wrong impression, especially because there's like the controlling part of how I was looked at as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think like, oh, I'm gonna meet this guy, maybe I'll marry him, and like it was silly. One of the guys I met online when I was 15, he was a year older than me and lived in like Connecticut. And like 2 weeks after meeting him, which we would talk from text from like the time I woke up till the time I went to bed. And like 2 weeks in, I told him I loved him.
Wow.
Actually, I told him, I said, I know that we're friends because I would tell you I love you. And then he told me he loved me. So then I said it back. but
Oh.
like, anyways, it's so uncomfortably awkward, and but at the same time I was like, but I'm not gonna call you my boyfriend because I don't know you.
Yeah.
You had at least
Yeah,
that
it's-
much sense, you know.
Mhm.
But it was like we talked about like getting married when I was 15, and then it was like, but we're not dating. so anyways, yeah, and I was very I'm sorry, I can't think of words. I was very in pursuit of love. I don't know, but I also like I held close to ideas of like, you shouldn't date if you don't want to get married, and like, so I haven't actually dated. Even, I mean, it's questionable with that guy. We didn't. We talked like on and off for like 3 years, and just like as friends and whatever. But yeah, he lived in Connecticut, so but yeah, I actually heard about an internship in New York through him doing children's ministry,
Huh.
and I did that after I graduated high school. I wouldn't have known about it if it weren't for him.
Huh.
But yeah, so yeah, I just I don't know, that ties in later, but that part ties in later, but backstory there, with the whole like love thing and just like, yeah, keeping like, I wouldn't make relationships with guys because I didn't want to accidentally end up in a relationship or misleading them or something, because I was scared that that's what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also like, yeah, I don't know, my grandparents are divorced and my mom's divorced, and I just like was super afraid that if I married the wrong person I would end up divorced because it ran in my family. I was obsessed with it. I would like read articles about how to not end up divorced, and like read that if you marry somebody whose parents are also divorced, you have a better chance of not getting divorced because you're both gonna fight harder. And I was like, well, I gotta marry somebody who's divorced then.
Oh, wow.
Like, or somebody whose parents are divorced, not
Rip.
just divorced. And like, I was just very obsessive with it, and like, yeah, Jesus was a means to me getting a husband. And yeah, so then I was 18. I did the internship, which was inside of a big church, and I hated big churches at the time. But I saw that their heart was actually for reaching as many people as possible. It wasn't like, oh, if we have a lot of numbers, then it looks better. It was actually like
having a
we want all
desire
of
to
these
share
people to
Jesus
know
with you.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I hadn't gone there, I don't think I would have ever ended up at Metro, because I would have stayed at my little church in Dearborn. Yeah, because they did things nice, and I knew the people, and I could have a relationship with them, and I loved them. But when I got back from that internship, my whole family was going to Metro. Like my grandma and grandpa who were divorced were both going.
Oh, wow.
My mom was going. My sister was going. Like the people that I cared about were all going to Metro, and I was like, well, if they can get my family into church, there's got to be something good happening here. And so
now, would you say, was it when you started going there that some of the shifts started taking place, as far as like, I guess not the self-imposed pressure of I guess kind of having the act down or whatnot, or when
No.
was that kind of shift for you?
That shift happened. So, in Alive, we had Alive students and then like Alive life group leaders, so the small group leaders, and then
And for those
we
listening,
implemented.
real quick, for those listening, Alive was the high school ministry at Metro, which was the church that we really all know each other from. So.
Yeah.
So with it, yeah, we had like the students and then the leaders, and then we implemented like grade leaders, like a girl and a guy grade leader for each grade,
mm-hmm.
so that there was like, because there were so many leaders, there were like 40 leaders or something.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this like system so that information would like drip down. I don't know if that's the right word, but so that like it wasn't everybody asking like Chris what to do, which Chris is the pastor. It wasn't everybody asking him what to do, but we had like a system so that everybody got the information. Well, I ended up as one of those leaders that was like for each grade. So I was like for the 9th grade girls or whatever. I don't remember what grade I started off as, but so I would then talk to all of the leaders of that grade. And when I stepped into that position, Gordon was then mentoring each of those leaders. So I had to have a monthly meeting with Gordon to like, it was the way of like making sure that the leaders were still poured into.
Yeah.
So I started having a monthly meeting with Gordon, and Gordon talked to me for 3 years before I like actually took it in.
Yeah.
Takes a while.
So,
Takes a while.
Yeah, so he would say things that would blow my mind, and then I'm like, okay, now I gotta think about this,
Yeah.
like what you're saying absolutely makes sense, and I don't understand why we're not talking about it, but I'm not ready to implement that. And like the main thing was surrender, and like surrender is really hard for me because it's like if I surrender to God, then I'm choosing to do what he calls me to do. And I was really scared that what he called me to do wouldn't be something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
facts.
So like, they're just like I was in school. I wanted to be married. Like, I still would like to be married one day, but I was like, how are we going to do this? But also, I wasn't friends with guys. I was like, I'm going to marry my best friend, but I'm not friends with guys. But it's going to work out somehow.
Yeah.
Like, just, so, yeah, I had all of these, like, hopes and dreams and, like, just ways that I wanted to live selfishly and hoped that God would bless. And so the idea of like surrendering those things is really hard because it's like, God, what if you ask me to do something that seems like hell to me? Like I don't know about that.
Do you think you realized that was your mindset like early on into that 3-year process, or was it kind of over time that you're like, there are things that I'm holding back?
So earlier I was talking about how I asked Jesus into my heart like every week when I was 7. And I was afraid that I would choose to live surrendered to God and not mean it. And like, I didn't want to do it because it sounded like the right thing to do, and then not actually do it. And like that is still true, but that is like what I understood of it, is that that's what I didn't want to say something that I didn't mean.
Gotcha.
But looking now, the reason why I didn't want to do it fully is because I didn't know. And then the like boy who I met when I was 15 actually moved to Detroit, and then I was terrified that God was going to tell me to marry him. And I was like, I don't want that, God.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want that. And I was like, why else would he be in Detroit? Silly me. But anyways, so I just like.
So you married him at 15, and then.
Yeah, exactly it. So, yeah, but I just, I was just terrified of these things that like all of the things I didn't want to do. I was afraid that those would be the things that God called me to do.
Yeah.
And so I was very scared of it. And like, God is so good. And I never remember like where the verse is at, but it's the one that says like, God is slow, not as we understand slowness, but slow, wanting everyone to come to repentance. I know it finishes with like wanting everyone to come to repentance, and like I was already in salvation at that point, but God is slow with me in such beautiful ways. And like as I'm like, God, I don't want to surrender to you, not mean it, he like took time to teach me about surrender. And like yeah, blessed are those who believe and don't see, but also if I ask, he shows. So so like
it's a win-win.
Yeah. So you know, he wasn't like, no, you have to do this right now or you don't love me. You know, he wasn't like testing me. He was calling me to surrender because it's the best thing that I could ever do. And he was patient in teaching me like, hey, I am a dad, and as a dad, like I won't give you a rock if you ask for bread. And like Calvin one time was because I talked to Calvin about it, like he was like, well, when you surrender, you're not like surrendering into his plan so much as you're like surrendering into his love. And like if he moves from love, like why wouldn't I want to be there? And like then I was talking to Andrew about it another time, and Andrew was like, yeah, like God is like a sick dad and wants to like just give you things that you don't want. Like, and it's like when you hear God's character like explained like that, it's like, why did I ever think that?
Real quick side note, I went to this like seminar thing today. It was very last minute. A buddy of mine invited me to it last night. But one of the things that the guy said was like, and this was like 9 other people were there or whatever, so it was like really small and like really personal. It was cool. But he just said like that God's goodness and God's love is like so unnecessary, which I thought that was like a really cool way of putting it, you know. And when you said that, it just reminded me of just like so many of the things that God lets us experience, and just like his just love is so over the top unnecessary, you know. Like I just thought that was I'd never thought of it like in that terminology, in a way that it's like exactly that. I just wanted to kind of toss that out there.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like it's so not understandable.
Yeah.
And, it's like wild to think like that I ever questioned surrendering, because it's like, I don't know, it's just crazy. So in the process, like I had a semester in college where I was taking a stress management class because I just needed the extra credits and it was easy. And I didn't feel like I dealt with stress, which I don't feel like I like had an unhealthy way of handling stress. But I just took it because it was an easy class, and then I would get financial aid or whatever. So I was taking it, and we had this like list that we had to check box things that we like were dealing with. And it was like, oh, I can't think of examples. I don't know why I tried, but They were just like this list of like things that you deal with, and I like marked like 3 of them, and there were like 40 or something. And I was just looking at the list, and I was like, these things I just give to God. Like, I just give these things to God. And I was just like driving to school one day, and I was like, Jesus, if I have you, I literally need nothing else. Like, I literally need nothing else. Like, why have I been trying? And I was like crying on my way to school, and I was just like crying for my classmates because they had, 30 of the things marked off, and I was like, how do you deal with this without Jesus? I don't understand. And I just like it just hit me like we sing songs like, yeah, all I need is Jesus, but like to actually have that realization, like literally, if I have you, I don't need anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's completely different to like actually understand it than to just like know in your head. And I just remember, so I had the class on Tuesday. So that Tuesday I went to the Tuesday gatherings. It wasn't called throne room yet, afterwards, and we had a worship night, and I just was like crying in the pew, and like I was like, all right, Jesus, like I'm done. I'm
That's
done
it.
trying to do this without you. Like it doesn't make sense to do this without you. And that was March 6th last year, so just over a year that I've actually been in surrender, and like it's like a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
And yeah, but God was just really faithful and like teaching me what the surrender looked like, and not just like telling me to jump in with my eyes closed. Like, and it's like part of his character that I super appreciate. That like, he works with me. Yeah, I don't know, but
That's sick. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I was kind of curious, like thinking about where you were in your head, in your heart. Are there any things, I don't know, maybe that God has since like called you to lay down, or I don't know, maybe the direction that your life has had more recently, that you're like, man, like not long ago I was not maybe ready to move into that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
talk about it.
Oh, there's a story. Sick. I didn't know.
No, so in 2016, I hurt my back really bad. I had 7 herniated discs, and I laid on the floor for 2 weeks without moving. It was a super long process. I got 2 different sets of spinal injections. I went through physical therapy for a year, and it was a huge mess. But it was a lot of painful. I started having panic attacks for the first time in my life, where I was just like, I'm never going to be able to do anything normal. Before I hurt my back, I decided I was going to go to school, be a physical therapy assistant, because it was a 2-year program and it would be fast. And they made like $70,000 a year. So, that seems like a good chance, a good choice. So, well, I hurt my back and then started going to physical therapy. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do what these people are doing. So I kind of dived into like this huge battle of like taking every personality test I could find online, because if I knew what my personality type was, then I could find what careers best suit that personality type, and I could make my career decisions based on that, because I didn't know what my passions were as far as working, and maybe this would help me figure it out. So I spent hours on my computer just researching different things, and I found like a speech language pathologist, which is like a speech therapist. And I was like, wow, God led me to this because I've never heard of this before. But really, it was hours of searching online that led me to it. So I was like, well, I like talking. Maybe I could help other people talk. And that was like the way I justified it, you know, in my little joking manner. And so I made a spreadsheet that had the next 5 years of classes I needed to take, which semester I needed to take them, all planned out. Like I said, controlling. And so I showed my academic advisor. She was like, nobody does this.
Yeah.
That's what we do usually. And I was like, I'm just, you know, ahead of the game. I was just very controlling. And so I started taking the classes that I needed to take at like the community college here. And then I was going to transfer to one of the state colleges. And yeah, I decided that's what I was going to do. And I said that Jesus told me to, but he didn't. And
always a good plan.
Yeah, I don't think he appreciated that. But so I started going to college, not knowing what I wanted to do because I knew I needed to go to college and I'd figure it out eventually, you know, because that's what they teach you in high school. And I like learning. So I was like a straight A student. And after I surrendered in March, I took my sister to school with me. She had classes an hour earlier than I did. So I was just sitting in the back of my car praying one day. I don't know. It was probably sometime in April, so like a month after surrendering. And I was just praying and I said, God, if you want me to be a speech language pathologist, like, I will absolutely do it for you. But it doesn't feel like that's what you want me to do. And like, if you don't want me to do it, I know you have something better. And better doesn't mean more prestige. You know, it just means better for him, more for his glory. And I was just like, if you have something else, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was just like overwhelmed with peace that I was not supposed to be a speech language pathologist. And I sat in my car and cried like from peace, not from a sadness that I'm not doing that, but from a piece of like, yeah, you have something better for me. And yeah, so I gave up college. And that's like a really big deal because in high school I was like, I'm going to be the first one in my family to go to college right away and graduate and whatever, but I didn't have like a sense of what I was going to do. And like I said, it's what I'm good at, and I was relying on that because yeah, it's what I was good at. And like what I told God last year is, I want my life to be a reflection of you being strong where I'm weak. And if I only ever do things that I'm strong at, you're not getting the glory. And like, that doesn't mean don't use your talents.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
But for me, it was something that was like, I didn't want people to look at me being a speech language pathologist and say, wow, Bethany's here because she worked really hard. Like, I didn't want that to be what my life looked like, was just Bethany trying really hard. And so that's like the major thing that I've had to give up. But God has been faithful. Like, I started working at a cafe after that, and I didn't like coffee.
Yeah.
Coolest thing.
And like my employer was like, Bethany, it's really funny that you don't like coffee, and you'll probably be one of our better baristas. Like, because I was just intent on like learning and doing it well. And it's like, that in itself was God being strong where I was weak, because I knew nothing about coffee. I didn't drink it because I didn't like the taste of it. Like, so he's just been really good, and like, I'm closer to him than I've ever been. And I didn't know that this kind of closeness existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like also with that, it goes back to like the security thing I said at the beginning, is that everything I intended for my life was to set up security for myself. Like, we moved around a lot when I was little. Like, we would end up at my grandma's house for a few months or however long at a time, and like I like had idolized the idea of like growing up in the same house your whole life, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
if I have kids, they're gonna get to know this life of like having a steady home for their entire life. And like, so, I wanted to be able to afford a house that had a spare bedroom so I could host people, and a room for however many kids I had. And I wanted to only have to work part time and still be a contributor to the household salary, not salary, is that right?
Income or whatever.
Income,
Yeah.
And I everything was about setting up a sense of security for myself. And like the big thing that I've had to learn with that is like Jesus is my security.
Yeah.
So no matter what city I live in or what my house looks like or what my job is or any of that stuff, like he is where my security is found, and like he is always there. So wherever I am secure. And like my security isn't based on my personality type or my, I don't know, whatever else that I had put it in. It's in him. And like that's why I was like, yeah, security is a lie, because we like live in this time where we want to have, nice houses that are just the way we want them. And
Yeah.
I don't know, just like a bunch of other things that actually aren't necessary. And that's what I had built up my security in, was my ability to take care of myself and not in my ability to be secure in him. And so I guess like I have also given up the idea of finding security in things, but that is like a welcomed thing to give up. It's like
There's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah. So I guess those are like the main things. Is there something else that I've talked about?
We talk about a lot, but like for real, like it's
about giving the stuff up.
Yeah, about like the surrender things, like what the Lord's been doing in you since then. Like I think you hit on like two very, very important things. Like the idea that our personal, because I mean, like we know that God makes much of those who tend to make much of him. Like that's kind of like a thing that he does with people, and it's oftentimes for us it's for the good or for the worse. But when we make our lives all about him, like he's ultimately like all about us, because he knows that, like the 24 elders in Revelation, like anything that he gives us, we're going to leverage for his glory all the more. And we're going to lay it down. We're not going to become attached to the gift itself, but the giver. And I know for a lot of us, like our plans and like our dreams and things, which are never bad, but if like left unsurrendered, we can become unhealthily attached to those things. So much so that if God's not in it, we don't want God anymore. And we'll abandon him for the sake of this vision of our lives that we want, or this, I guess, this perception of ourselves that we want to sell to people about who we are. And a lot of the things that we can attain can testify to our platitudes and like how hard we work, or like, the things that we can get if we like try our hardest and things like, and like I say, those things are bad. Things aren't bad, but when they're placed before God, automatically they're bad and they have to be reprioritized. But there's so much surrender in that, because like with you being the first kid in your family to go to college and graduate, like with that being the goal, like there's a lot riding on that, like there's a lot of glory in that for you. If you were to do that, your family would probably praise you and like like Bethany's like the wonder child of our family because she
I
did
already
right. You know, well, I mean,
was.
like in that sense, like there's a lot of praise in something like that because it's a noble thing. Like it's not at all a bad thing at all. But to become overly attached to that plan, you would have missed out on everything the Lord was trying to do in the process. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think even for like all of us, and maybe even for myself included, um, we become so focused on the end goal that we miss out on who we're becoming in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And what will really suck is that we get to the end goal of what we think our lives should look like, or the vision that we want to accomplish, and we're not the person we need to be to sustain those things, and we lose them.
Yeah. It was
Like,
okay. Sorry.
um,
My bad. Well, first of all, I got some milk and cookies, so preset.
hey,
But yeah, I was just thinking about like the passage that we talked to our buddy Adam Doorband on our past episode about the verse that says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart." And the context that he talked about it in is, like it's not that He will give you the desires that you already had, but more so He will give you His desires. He will place His desires in you.
We talked about that.
Yeah. And just that, like,
that makes all the difference.
and I mean, there are times that things happen, like you surrender to God, and then He's like, "Oh, that speech pathology job that you thought you had, I don't want you to do it the way that you wanted to, but like I still have that for you." I'm not saying that that's your story, but there are times that He. I think it's when He defines it. There are times that like He's just like, "Oh, that thing that you thought was selfishly all you. I did put that there, but you weren't gonna, I don't know, it wasn't my intent for you to have it on your terms, which is a really beautiful thing. But
that's sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of like going off the thought that like, yeah, I don't know, it's not that God doesn't want us to experience good or like have good things, but yeah.
Right, which is why it's like the prayer is like, hey, if you want this for me, like I'm for it. But like if not, like that's what I want to be for. And just like I think I've talked to Calvin about the same thing. Like we're made new creations, and like our heart is part of that. And like sometimes the desires of our heart, they're actually like the desires He has for our heart. Like they're not just like if your desire is to cheat on your wife, like, and then you come to know God, like He's not going to give you that desire. You're made new. You have new desires. It's probably going to be to pursue your wife again or something. But like
some holy.
Yeah. So so absolutely. And I'm also like on a path of figuring out the desires God has for me. Because it's one thing that I was just talking to Calvin and Andrew about Tuesday. Tuesday is when we did our road trip to Toledo. So it's the idea of like I haven't seen myself as like a passionate person necessarily, and like I'm not like the person that's like jumping up and down about something. I'm not like a fiery, passionate kind of person.
Yeah.
Not that I think that that's bad. I think that that's great, but it's just like because that's what I have equated as passion. Like it's hard to know what my passions are and like what the things that matter to me most are, and like just like letting God speak into that, because it's like there are things that I like to do, but they're not what matter most. Like I crocheted a hat for my cousin and it's really fun and it's great, but I don't actually care too much about that. Like it's fun to see the reactions, but like just figuring out like what the desires are. And that was something else that I want to say is like something else I've learned is just that we can ask God for things, or not just for things, but like about things. Like sometimes things just don't make sense. Like
Yeah.
I'm reading Jeremiah, and like one of the things that I was struggling with was the idea that God is just and loving at the same time. And it's like, I absolutely know that that's truth. Like, I know in my heart that that is true. I know that those two things have to work together because they do in who God is. And I said, but God, I just don't understand right now how you can be both of those things. Like,
Yeah.
how can you tell Jeremiah to stop praying for your people because you're not going to take them back? Like, how can you be just and loving at the same time? And like before, that would be something I maybe asked, but I didn't expect to like receive an answer. But like this time it was like, God, how are you both of these things? And I'm like crying because I cry out of every emotion ever. So I'm crying out of frustration. And like, God, how are you both of these things? I don't get it. Like, I know I should just accept it, but I don't get it. And he was like, oh, like me being just works with me keeping my word. And like when I told the Israelites what to do, I told them what would happen if they didn't do those things. And like if I let that slide and I didn't keep my word about punishment, like you wouldn't be able to trust that I keep my word about promises. And like,
wow.
Like, yeah, so being just and loving work together, because being just means that he upholds what he says he upholds. And like that includes punishment, but it also includes promises. And like just think like if God was like, oh, you screwed up again, but it's okay, we'll just brush it under the rug. Like, and he does that, every time. Like when he says like, oh, I'm never gonna flood the world again, like, well, I don't really have anything to support that you won't go back on your word. And like, so it's there's freedom in that's been really cool. And in surrender, like knowing that I don't have to just like take things at the like front word without digging deeper into it. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Such a good word.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
that's sick.
There's actually like there's a verse, Jeremiah 33:3. I know that one. I don't remember the word for word version, but it's like, ask me and I will show you things not yet seen. And like, that's what he says he'll do. So it's like, that also is, a thing that backs up like him showing me what surrender is before like me giving in. He says like, ask me and I'll show you the things not yet seen. Like I'll show them to you. And I just really respect that part. I really adore that part because some things are just hard.
Yeah.
Trust is one of those things. Like it's hard to trust God if you don't know him. And I think it's really cool that instead of him just saying like, trust me because I said so, he's more like, I'm going to reveal like facets of my character to you so that you understand who is giving the instruction, rather than just like, follow me because thus saith the Lord. If you don't, I'm going to send a lion to eat your head off on the road, or like something crazy like that. Because he could, but in his love and his genuine desire for family, he comes alongside as a patient parent rather than like a hard reprimand. And like that's one of the more beautiful sides of him that makes us want to bring our weakness before him instead of like trying to hide it as if he doesn't already know.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Good word. Are we cool with wrapping up? I was just thinking like, been talking for a while. And yeah, I think there's been like a whole lot to unpack, and it's been really good.
I hope I didn't overwhelm too much.
No, it was sick. I felt like a couple times like, man, we could talk for hours and hours.
There's a lot that I've had to have breakthrough for.
Yeah. That's sick. Yeah.
Shout out to the slow learners. The Lord loves us too.
Yeah. I mean, we all are, just in different ways, you know? For real, though. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think this is you too, Calvin. Just like, I don't know, things that we maybe realized in the last couple of years that were like, it took me this long to get there, you know?
Yeah. You gotta pride yourself on, like, I've heard that verse like 5,000 times, but the one time Bethany said it, it stuck. It was like, what is that? Like,
yeah, we
like,
talked a
how?
lot. We talked about that a lot when you were in town, right, Calvin? About like how
Yeah.
we've both like had experiences like talking to other people where you know, they might say something and they're like, yeah, I'm really, you know, realizing this thing about, you know, God and about life, and we're just like, yeah, we usually don't say this, but it's just like, I told you that like 6 times, and I overheard other people tell you that like 12 times. But just that, like,
Yeah.
we both, you know, we all do the same exact thing. Yeah.
I was just telling, I think Andrew, I don't know if Calvin was there, but like, there's like, oh yeah, Calvin was there, because I was just thinking about, I don't know, the background doesn't matter, but the idea of like, when I have revelation that I want to share with somebody to like help them, like, it doesn't click as much as if it's like direct revelation from God. It's like,
Yeah,
it's hard to dispute what God says. It's easier to dispute what somebody heard from God.
Right.
And like,
yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So.
Yeah, and people might not be ready to hear it, you know. If you weren't ready to hear something for 3 years, you know, like,
It's true. Yeah, and bro, we talked about that too in the car, like how oftentimes we can forget that the revelations that God has personally given us didn't happen overnight either. So like,
yeah,
who are we to expect like immediate results when we say something as if it didn't take us 12 years to understand what God was trying to say? Like, it's kind of stupid.
I think
not fair.
Part of that conversation too is just like, wait a second, you mean that me, Josh, in my grand wisdom, you know, like, you were not able to understand that the way that I'm so clearly putting it to you. It's just like how dumb that is. But,
right.
But yeah, I think we think that way, and of course, being honest with ourselves, we're guilty of that too. But
yeah.
See, Josh, I don't know if this is a weird thing, but I don't have a band page or spoken word or something. But if anybody hears, never.
Oh, you're starting a band, cool.
Apparently, Calvin thinks so.
Yeah,
but if there's something that I like talked about that somebody wants to like Facebook message me about or something, I would be okay with that.
Okay,
like,
cool.
I just know there's some interesting things that I might not have gotten deep into, but there's a lot that God has shown me, and I would be willing to talk about it if somebody wants to talk about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll toss a link like to your profile.
That sounds so odd.
Facebook page.
Yeah.
That's happened in the past. Like, other people have offered that too. But I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll toss a link in the comments. We'll toss your home address, phone number, and social in there too, just to make sure.
I have your home address, but do you have mine? Because when I sent you a letter, it was from Calvin. So.
Oh, that's that's weird on so many levels.
It wasn't from me though, like at all, because I got the same letter from me to me, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
like,
let's just talk about this since we're on it real quick. So, are we talking about the Christmas card? Is that where?
Yes.
Okay.
Dude.
So, this past Christmas, we get this Christmas card from the house that, you know, we own, that Calvin is one of the renters at, and it's like it was all these like very pixelated, like just like really ridiculous pictures of the people that live at the house, and I was just like, what in the world is this? It was pretty hilarious, but then I find out that none of the guys sent it. And yeah,
No.
like Calvin said, he was one of the recipients of his own Christmas card. So, Bethany, what's the story there?
Well, so me and Maggie, which is one of our other friends, we were playing pranks on the guys last year that weren't real serious. Like, we were all at their house one time and they left and they're like, "You're welcome to hang out." So we were like, okay. So we went and bought sticky notes and like wrote encouraging things or silly things on them and put them up at the house.
Literally like 2,000 sticky notes.
That is not.
Literally 1,500 sticky notes.
Anyways.
So it was like 1,500?
It was a lot.
Then one day while they were all gone, we like took these like really subpar like Christmas decorations and decorated your house with them on the outside.
They did.
That's great.
And then we decided that it would be really funny if we sent Christmas cards out to some of our friends from them, but
so good.
also sent one to them and to ourselves so that we were in the clear also.
Genius level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we put the return address was their address on all of them. So some of our friends felt really cared for by them, which was not the goal.
Which was not the goal.
The goal wasn't to prank our friends. It was just to like make it seem like the guys sent out Christmas cards, and then they like one of them like posted a picture on Facebook like, "Oh, the guy sent out Christmas cards," and I was like, "Oh no, this wasn't supposed to be public knowledge."
That's great.
And, yeah. So
it's quite funny. We do love our friends, by the way. So like, but Christmas cards is not one of our love languages.
Yeah.
So like, we totally would have just missed the bus on that altogether. But you know, Bethany and her infinite wisdom decided to take these photos.
Actually, Maggie took them, or we found them on Facebook.
Yeah. Calvin, I was gonna say it's clear that Bethany and Maggie love your friends, but
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's not for lack of trying, man. Like, I don't know.
Our first prank was actually Andrew let us into the house while nobody was there, and we put up pictures of Colin in this like ugly Christmas sweater. And Maggie also printed out a magnet of him in the waterfall picture that I believe you took.
Yep,
so
and we
that is on the fridge in your house.
It is.
We took that picture. It's a very odd one, and unique. We took it at a waterfall in Tennessee when he came down south to visit my family with me, and it makes a couple appearances, I think, in the movie that we made.
Yep.
Where Colin played all of the prostitutes. I'm not going to get into the context there. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah.
Yeah.
On that note.
Anyways. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bethany, for joining us and sharing your story.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for
Seems
sure.
like a whirlwind, but
yeah. It was so good. Like so conversational.
Okay,
it's so
cool.
good. Like it's good to hear from like you, like exactly the things that the Lord's working in your heart, because surrender is like a really big thing, and
it's not easy. Just so we're clear, it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes trust. You know, it definitely takes trust, and to be bold enough to say like, yeah, this is terrifying. I don't know what it's gonna look like. At the end of the process, I don't know what I'm gonna look like, but Lord, if you're saying that you're gonna work all these things for my good, then I'm gonna trust your love for me to lead me where I need to be, and being bold enough to just say that, like I am scared, but if I ultimately want what you want.
Josh, I'm so sorry, but can I say one last thing?
Yeah, feel free.
Earlier I was saying that like when I was a teenager, the thing that like my relationship with Jesus was me trying to look like the love and the kindness and all that thing, that kind of thing, the fruit of the Spirit. The thing that I've learned is that it's not about it's not that I do something to become those things, but that I ask God to have that be fruit in my life, and then the things come from that place.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's one of the things that I've had to learn, is that it's not about me working to become kind and to have self-control, but instead it's me abiding in him and him producing those things from that place of abiding in him. And I just wanted to clear that up because I forgot to
Yeah, good
bring
work.
that up. But yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. That's a killer note
The
to
longest
close on to.
ending ever.
No, you're good. That's an important note and a good one.
Cool.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Yeah, and like Bethany mentioned before, if you want to hit her up, if anything that she said resonates with you, or you want to, I don't know, maybe give Calvin a hard time about things with Bethany. Just Calvin, I do it because I love you, man.
I don't know, man. All right.
But yeah, feel free.
I think you did pretty good today.
Yeah, I think you did too. We didn't reveal a contest winner. I'm not there with you in person. Who fidgeted less between the two of you?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention
I've
to
had
Cal.
this thing in my hand the entire time, just off camera. So
right.
I will admit to myself that Bethany won. Yeah.
So Calvin, I think that makes you the winner. I don't know if the contest was to fidget less or more. But
yeah, is this golf or baseball? I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Calvin, you're the winner.
Woo!
Yay! Thanks so much for your time, everybody. If you want to check out what we're up to, past episodes, if you want to support us in prayer and messages, and if you want to support us financial, we'd appreciate it, but no pressure in that world. So letgoddie.com have all of the 109 past episodes up there. So thank you so much, and until next time.